Makima's Best Girl. Chainsawman was a show that had an insane amount of hype and anticipation for its release, as Studio Mappa would be the ones to produce the show and animate it as well, which was interesting to say the least since Mappa has been in a lot of controversy in the last couple of years, particularly with the work on Attack on Titan Season 4, notably for the CGI and reports of them being overworking in terms of their animators. And this would basically make Chainsawman very, very controversial in terms of how fast it was being produced and overall quality of animation, which is to be expected since Chainsawman is a very popular manga, so being translated to anime was very interesting to see. And truth be told, my feelings towards the show were very skeptical, and I haven't been a fan of many animes released in the last 3 to 5 years, as I am more of a mid-2000s, more so 90s anime fan, as more shows recently like Demon Slayer, My Hero Academia, and Naruto and stuff like that has never really resonated with me. And I haven't been a fan of those type of shows. Thus, I was anticipating Chainsaw Man to be severely overrated and not very good. And thankfully, I stand very corrected, as Chainsaw Man has to write some very memorable characters with some of my favorite waifus in recent years, and Makima's Best Girl. And one of the best things I wanted to discuss about Chainsaw Man right away is the directional presentation of Chainsaw Man. And you get this first and foremost from the intro, which pays several references to great movies such as Pulp Fiction, No Country for Old Men, and Reservoir Dogs, and along with an interesting anime reference which is to Evangelion. And this just shows a great appreciation for other shows and other pieces of media, which you can kind of see throughout many times of shots throughout the show. And several times throughout the show, we get a great composition or visual presentation. And what I mean by this is we get interesting shots of maybe items that you might not be considered very important. And one scene in particular is the scene between Makima and Denji, where it establishes them in a way of a romantic relationship, but then it also pans to other things such as the ink on her marker and the paper that he's writing on. And I think it just kind of makes the scene more impactful because it makes you focus on other things, because it really ties into the world overall. In Chainsaw Man, you have this, we're focusing on this relationship, we're kind of ignoring the fact that there's devils in this world and contracts to be made between the devils. So it just kind of takes you away from that for a little bit. And it really just takes you away from the previous, groundbreaking otherworldly entities that are part of this world. And that leads me into the devils themselves. And this is easily one of the most interesting parts of Chainsaw Man, with various emotions and ideas being incorporated to the ideas of devils. And the devils are shown to be the enemies of humanity effectively, yet we see many characters that are introduced to them who have contracts with these devils, with this being how we are introduced to some of the main characters, and mainly Denji first and foremost, because we are seeing Denji as a character is honestly one of the best parts of Chainsaw Man, because we are shown that he has a relationship with Pochita, a dog-like devil with a chainsaw on his forehead, and immediately this show presents Denji as a struggler, as someone who is just trying to get by day to day, and just trying to squeeze by and pay off his debts, which are not his, but his family's. So basically, we already see Denji has to do hardships that are not even of his own doing, and basically has to work for other people, effectively being a dog, basically, but having a dog as his best friend. And this does give us a reason to cherish the relationship between Pochita and Denji, as we feel for them and we see them struggle and not have very much. And then the show takes that away from us when he is betrayed by his employer, a Yakuza. And this forces Pochita to make a deal with Denji, which is to see his dream in exchange for living in his heart, or basically effectively giving him his power. And then we are introduced to Chainsaw Man, which is basically one of the best character designs I've seen in recent years, as I love the rawness and extremism of the forms of many characters in Chainsaw Man, such as Katakana Man, and more so the devils themselves have very extreme, unrestricted form, which makes the world and the characters much smaller. But in the same time, you feel this type of rage for Denji and this type of motivation, because he's going against otherworldly beings. And he's able to do so just from the help of his dog, basically equating the two. And this leads us to our interesting, basically counter-off with Power. Power is basically a character who we see as this non-human and basically anti-human, yet who shows human emotions. Makima's Best Girl, a fiend who Power is someone who loves blood, and more importantly her cat Meowie. And immediately we see this lack of humanity with Power, But then the show immediately counters this with a love for Meowie, which is seen throughout the show, offering Denji a squeeze of her opie in exchange for saving Meowie. And after the first couple of episodes, I was not really a fan of Power, honestly. But then after reading the manga and after going on later episodes, you really get this kind of brother and sister sibling vibe from Power and Denji, because they both are basically enemies to humanity because they're both technically devils, while Power is a fiend. They're both non-human, and they both kind of exploit it that way. When we see Kishibe train both of them, that he knows that he can just basically abuse them because they're essentially immortal and they can take anything. And doing this, so we do see a relationship between these two, not maybe romantic, but more so of siblings, as Power did trick Denji into squeezing her opie by wearing pads. So they do good past this, and they do seem to cherish each other's presence, as we see in episode 12. In the ending, we see them eating and sleeping together, which does give this family a vibe. First things first, Makima's character being the manipulator is one of the best recipes for a great villain / protagonist, because we do not see Makima as a villain because she's helping effectively who we root for as the heroes, but we see her doing very villainous things and being very, very inhumane and just caring for taking human life. We see this when in the episode during the confrontation with Katakana Man, that we see Makima completely disregard the lives of prisoners, more so possibly because they're convicts, but also she disregards the lives of people she murders just by squeezing them. So this shows she has a real lack of compassion and really overall care for humanity, and yet she claims her goals are for a better world, which gives a good balance and makes you question why she does what she does. I compared it similar to Light from Death Note, because Light really was a character who I loved, because I loved how his whole thing was creating a better world, and yet he was doing a demonic or horrible way of doing it by murdering people. And using people as tools are similar, as both characters do this in their respective shows, as Makima sets herself apart from separate evil, as she sees herself as necessary evil, that this evil needs to be done in order to have a better world, not just for her but for others. And in that sense, you get a very sense of kind of a weird sense of nobility in a way, because Makima is doing these things in terms of being better for humanity, not just for herself. And interesting, she separates herself from the Yakuza she kills because she claims the criminals are sacrificed. Basically, she claims she's sacrificing them and basically doing her duty because she's a better evil than what the Yakuza does. The Yakuza are basically warding off other countries' gangs, but they're doing so ineffectively in the eyes of Makima. And speaking of eyes, I think her eyes are honestly one of the parts of her character, because we have so many scenes of her being sweet or being very nice to Denji, but yet her eyes are so dead and so emotionless that it makes you question, does she mean what she mean, or is she just using Denji as a pet as they first met? And this really is what makes her a very, very deep and complex character, because you have to question yourself and question her. Is this really about forming a relationship, or just Denji a means to end? And for all the manga readers out there, I believe they can get their answer from that. And in terms of the overall show, I did like season 1 very much. It was a show I was trying to watch constantly on every Tuesday, and it just really was refreshing to see a newer show have such complex and directional basically weight, because we see all of these new shows who are kind of just basic or just bland, and there's many times where they're releasing a new show, a new anime, and it's just bland for me. Like, I like Don't Toy Me Miss Margaret Toro, but season 2 I'm not interested. Uzaki-chan season 2 I'm not interested. Komi-san season 2 I'm not interested, because these shows, they're not bad, they're just very you know, and if a show doesn't make me feel any emotion, how can I be interested in it? While Chainsawman is doing the exact opposite and making me feel all types of emotions about liking a character, disliking a character, hoping this character dies, hoping this character survives, hoping these characters go out, you know? It's just all these emotions, I'd much rather feel that than feel nothing. And Chainsaw Man definitely does make me feel stuff because it has so many layers and so many goals that basically are going to be accomplished. It just depends on who's going to live to see those goals come to fruition. And I think that gives Chainsaw Man a really differentiator from its other shows. And I think a lot of people like newer shows like the Demon Slayers, like the My Hero Academias and stuff like that, but I never hear people say they like it because of the story or because of the emotional weight of it. I never hear that. You hear it mostly because of the fight scenes, because of great animation, and those are certainly great parts of a show, but it's really the story that gets you into it, and the other parts, like how many people like scenes of just two characters talking, or how many is that? That's some of my favorite scenes. You know, some of my favorite scenes in Cowboy Bebop, some of my favorite scenes in Death Note, some of my favorite scenes in, you know, in Evangelion are parts of just character dialogue. And that's story, and story is necessary, but there's so many new animes that don't really have a wayful story, and when you do that, they're really forgettable. But Chainsaw Man was able to reassert itself as being both great fight scenes, such as Katakana Man versus Chainsaw Man, and Denji versus various devils, and then they balance that with other emotions of Denji wanting to be something in this world and wanting some pleasure. And it's just an overall great balance of that. And I feel the second season hopefully continues that. It might be a couple of years because there's a lot of stuff that's an anime, and I know it's gonna be a nightmare for Mappa. You know, they're still working on Attack on Titan season 4 part 3. Just various things, honestly. And it's just very interesting to see, and I'm very excited for season 2. And I wanted to make a side note that I know Roscoe Morning Girl Senpai was going to be episode 10, but that video got copyrighted to oblivion, and there's no way I can upload it because I also wanted to use a song of the OST, the ending, but that got copyrighted too, so there's no way that I can do that one. So this is episode 10 and the season finale of season 1. I know it's a show that it's kind of mainstream, but I did also because it's a mainstream show that is very, very interesting to me. So this is the end of season 1 of Anime Analysis, and next we'll do season 2. And at the moment, I don't really have a show what I would do because there's so many shows I do want to talk about, but it's hard to find footage. For example, I could do one possibly on Berserk, and that one, my goal is to do of my top 5 to put one in each season. I want there to be 5 seasons respectively, and my goal is to put one of my top 5s in each. For example, we put Toradora already, so we already got one of those done. And maybe season 2 could have Berserk or Kill la Kill. It just really depends on how I could find the footage, because when I record these videos, I want to put in some sort of, you know, that has to do. I'm not just going to talk over a picture. I want to be something, you know. And that's where I come into that. But I really enjoyed this show, and I think you should watch it because it has some great characters, amazing character designs. I mean, amazing. And it has the best waifu of 2022. And, you know, Makima's the best girl, that's all I gotta say. So I will see you in the next video of Anime Analysis, but this is the end of season 1, and thank you for watching.